Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. In this video, we're going to talk about whether or not you need to train twice per day as a hybrid athlete. And for the purposes of this video, we will define hybrid athlete or hybrid training as the simultaneous pursuit of strength and endurance. Now, there are better definitions of this sort of training methodology, training philosophy, but for the purposes of today, that will suffice. And I wanted to make this video because a lot of the sort of social media personalities and brands that you'll see that are built themselves upon hybrid training of some sort are the sort of people who are regularly training twice per day for, whatever reason. And that can give the impression that this is a sort of required thing in order to have this sort of goal. So I wanted to make this video just discussing whether or not that is the case. Do you need to train twice per day in order to see reasonable results over time with the simultaneous pursuit of strength and endurance? And the answer is no. And I'm going to spend the rest of this video talking about why. So the best answer I can give you as to why the answer is to no, as to whether or not you need to train twice per day, is to discuss the minimum effective dose of training for both strength and endurance. And we're going to define the minimum effective dose as the least amount of training that you can do across a week and still see reasonable, consistent gains in both your strength and endurance or muscle growth. I'm going to use those terms interchangeably for this video over time. Now, for strength training or for lifting in general, it is worth first defining kind of what volume is for that. And volume for lifting is the number of sets taken per week, about 1 to 3 reps shy of failure for each muscle group or movement, depending on what your goals are. And so, for instance, as an easy example, 4 sets of leg extensions would count as 4 sets per muscle group, being the quads, per week. 4 sets of squats would count as 4 sets for the quadriceps and 4 sets for the glutes in that week. And it does not matter how many reps you do as long as you are about 1 to 3 reps shy of failure. So if you do 5 reps and you could have done 7, or if you do 15 and you could have done 17, those 2 sets are equivalent in terms of the adaptations you will receive from those sets. Now, there's much more that can be said on that, but for the purpose of today, that is going to suffice. For lifting, the minimum effective dose that you can do and still see gains in muscle growth or strength, and this has been tested in people who are novice trainees as well as more advanced trainees, and I will cite all the evidence I'm using to make these claims down below, is somewhere between 2 to 4 sets per muscle group per week. And that can be very easily accomplished with just two full body workouts across a week. For endurance, it's a little bit harder to define because really it'd be easier if you defined what we mean by endurance. Do we mean anaerobic or aerobic? Do we mean any certain distance? And with lifting, there is a sort of identifiable single unit we can boil it down to, i.e., 1 set. But that doesn't really exist for endurance. And so what I typically tell people, and this isn't my most evidence-based claim, and I'll kind of speak to why I come to this in a sec, is I'll say that 90 minutes per week is probably a reasonable minimum effective dose to sort of operate based off of. And now for context, the minimum physical activity guidelines, pretty much no matter where you look, whether it's the CDC, the ACSM, whatever, are set at 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week. And I'm telling you that, as long as it's programmed well, and there is some thought and some thinking behind it, that the minimum effective dose is probably less. And I sort of just base that off of that. I have worked with people using such a schedule and used it myself and seen results reasonably over time. I also want to make the point, though, that something is always better than nothing. So, for instance, if you only have time for 80-90 minutes of endurance training per week, that does not mean you should just not do it. Like 30 minutes per week is better than 0 minutes per week. But, in any case, I do have to sort of draw the line somewhere so I don't just go on an it depends rant forever. And 90 minutes is a fairly reasonable number to put in my opinion. But again, it really does help if there is some thought behind how that is structured across the week in terms of volume distribution, intensity, etc. So just to drive this home a little bit more, I wanted to give some sort of example weeks of training to, sort of put that into practice. So one structure this could look is if you are doing 2 full body lifts per week, say a Monday and a Thursday, and 2 45-minute endurance sessions per week. So maybe you're doing that on a Tuesday and a Saturday. I don't think it's unreasonable to have 3 combined sessions per week. And yes, you will find people saying that it's not best practice to combine them into the same session. And I would agree. But again, something is always better than nothing. And even if it's not optimal per se, you still can see results as long as it's programmed well. So you could do 3 combined sessions of 30 minutes of lifting, probably full body, combined with 30 minutes of endurance following or before. It really depends on what your goals are. You could also do 2 full body lifts per week, again, maybe on a Monday and a Thursday, and 3 30-minute endurance sessions per week. Because again, both of these would equate to 90 minutes per week if we're going to use that as our defined minimum effective dose. Or really whatever other structure allows you to sort of meet those minimum effective dose guidelines that fits with your schedule. Like there's no one right way to do this. So based off of all of that, no, 2 trainings per day are not required because you really only need 3 trainings per week. So if you are someone who is interested in pursuing strength and endurance simultaneously, but you've been hesitant about whether there is enough time in the week to do so, hopefully this gives you a bit more peace of mind and breaks that belief a bit. So if you have any questions about anything I talked about here today, do not hesitate to give a comment down below and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And I'm going to end this video right here. So I will see you next time.